Hi guys, in this video we're looking at a mock test from Ashfield Driving Test Centre. Now the video starts here just on the driveway on the way out of the test centre, and as we reach the end here, my advice is always keep the car nice and straight till you reach the very end of the road. The pupil here does hang back a little so she can see round the signs on the right to see what's coming, and this is absolutely fine as long as you make a safe judgment as to when to go. Like I say, my advice is get right up to the end and you can see around the sign. You're as close to the junction as you can, so you've got the least distance to cover when you go, but nice and straight so you're not cutting over any of the lines as well. Up ahead we've got a railway crossing, so of course watch out for those lights. If they do come on, you're expected to stop before the stop line, and if you can't get across the crossing fully, then wait before it. Don't wait on the crossing, because that will be a very risky thing to do. We've then got a mini roundabout where we're going straight ahead, and as you see from the markings here, we've got to keep in the right hand lane. We give way to people like the van there coming from the right. Pupil does a good job there, just hanging back, making sure that other car isn't coming our way, and then getting on with things as soon as there is a clear opening. If you noticed it as well, just leaving the roundabout there is a national speed limit sign. I wouldn't advise doing 60 here because we've got the traffic lights, but of course if you get a safe opportunity we should build that speed up. We'll be turning right, and this is when my pupil makes her first error. As she brings the car to a stop at the traffic lights, her front wheels are over the line slightly. Now, whilst this doesn't cause an issue at this junction, on this occasion, it could limit the space for large vehicles to turn in from the left side, potentially. So we want to be careful not to sit over those lines. They're normally in the position they're in for a reason, so make sure you're fully behind the line when you stop. We've got a green filter arrow, which means the oncoming traffic won't be going, so the pupil makes good progress across the junction and builds up speed well here. Now, it's always good to do a mirror check just as you finish a turn to see if any vehicles follow in, particularly if there's changes in speed. Like here, we've got a reduction to 30, where other vehicles might take the opportunity to try and overtake you. Up ahead we've got a mini roundabout where we'll be turning left, and again you can see the markings here nice and clearly. So as with any left turn, check your mirrors, pop that left signal on in good time, take up that position, and then roll on through the turn if it's safe. The pupil here can see it's nice and clear, so she maintains good progress through this junction, and that's absolutely spot on what she's done there. I'm going to get my pupil to pull up on the left in a moment, and during your test you'll be asked to do this several times, and it's just to see that you can pick a safe location to pull up and that you can then move away safely as well in different circumstances. So as we're coming up to pull over, the pupil checks her left mirrors, she signals because we've got vehicles behind, and then tucks right into the curb, allowing those vehicles to pass without any issue. When she stops, she slips it into park as well, which is absolutely spot on. And when we're moving away, we slip it into drive, check it's safe, check over that shoulder as well, and then move away if there's a safe gap. You can see the pupil waits here for a short while, and that is purely because there's cars coming up behind. If there's anything coming and you're not confident you can get away, then be patient, let them pass, and then move on afterwards. She is a little bit slow moving away. However, there's nothing behind that's close enough to be a problem, and by the time anything is catching up, her speed's picked up anyway, so I have no reason to mark a fault on that occasion. So we're just entering a 40 zone here, so wherever the speed changes, the examiners again want to see a little check on those mirrors to make sure you know what's going on behind you if someone's chancing it to overtake, for example, and then you of course want to pick up the speed. We've got some traffic lights coming up too. My advice for traffic lights is always come off the power for a few seconds, cover the brake ready for that light change, because it probably will if it's been green a while. Once you get to a point of no return, back on the power and away you go. If the light changes before you reach that point of no return, then of course you stop. and you wait it out until it's green again. Up ahead, my pupil is going to make a couple of mistakes, and the first is going the wrong way at the mini roundabout. And whilst this won't be recorded as a fault in itself, the fact that she doesn't signal before turning left is going to be recorded as a driver fault. A serious fault then comes from her coming around the corner too fast and ending up straight on the wrong side of the road. And I've had to correct her and bring her back to our side of the road straight away because of the hill up ahead. So this one has to go down as a serious fault, unfortunately, and that would be a fail on the test straight away. What we don't want to do is go out like that onto the wrong side of the road as we corner. So take your time, look up into the corners, and make sure you're tucking into your side of the road safely. In order to correct the wrong direction, I'm going to get the pupil to do a turn in the road. And whilst we're doing this, unfortunately, the pupil makes a couple of serious mistakes. With every manoeuvre, the examiners want to see good control over the car and good observations throughout. So you'll notice as we turn across the road, the car just does not swing over enough. The pupil doesn't use all of the steering and doesn't use all of the road. As a result, I've had to instruct her on how to turn the car. I think this was more stress than not knowing what to do. As we've reversed as well, the pupil hasn't been looking over her shoulders and bringing the car backwards. So if she's reversing without looking behind her, she doesn't know what's there, and the examiners will mark this as a serious fault. They may even stop you if there is something there, and of course then it would become a dangerous fault. So make sure whenever you reverse the car, you take your time and you look around fully before you reverse, checking over your left shoulder and out the back window, and over your right shoulder before you move. Getting back en route now, we're going to go left at the mini roundabout. The pupil does a really nice job here of bringing the car down to the corner, checking it's safe from the right, and then making good progress as she moves out into the new road. So we're back en route now, and away we go. Down into a 30-mile-an-hour zone now, and of course the examiners want to see you covering those mirrors and reducing your speed before you reach the sign. When you're coming down a speed limit, you have to reduce your speed before the sign. If you're going up in a speed limit, wait till you get to the sign before you accelerate. The pupil handles this taxi absolutely beautifully. She just comes off the power, covers her brakes straight away. She's on the mirrors, absolutely flawless, can't falter. If someone else pulls out on you on your test, you won't necessarily fail. It's about how you respond to that. I'm going to take a right at the mini roundabout here, and there's a little bit of hesitation here. Mini roundabouts, we've got to be quite quick at picking our gaps and getting on with things, and unfortunately the pupil hesitates a little bit here because the Land Rover there, it creates a shield for us from the van on the right. However, she decides to let that pass and then let the van pull out. Now, I don't think that was enough to warrant a serious fault, but it was an opportunity we could have taken, and there were cars behind us. So I'm going to put it down as a driver fault on that occasion. As we enter the new road, again, a mirror check to see what's going on behind us, and away she goes. This pupil is really aware of the mirrors on this test, and it's fantastic to see. The examiners want to see that on your test as well, that you're looking around frequently, checking both sides in the rear view regularly as you go along. And this way you're not going to get caught out by vehicles coming up behind to overtake you, or cyclists when you're slowing down for corners. You just got to show really good awareness throughout your test. So keep your eyes moving constantly, even if there's not a lot going on. Along this road, you'll notice the pupil's travelling at a reduced speed, even though the speed limit is 30. Because of the amount of parked cars, junctions and bends, that poor visibility means we can't progress to 30 mile an hour, and she does a really good job keeping the car in the low 20s as we go along here, being very mindful of the cars as she passes by, using the mirrors frequently. As I've already said, the examiners want to see really frequent and effective mirror use, so keep your eyes moving, especially in roads like this where there's a lot of activity and you need really good awareness of clearance and passing vehicles as you go along. I'm going to ask my pupil to pull up on the left behind the next parked vehicle, and the examiners will ask you to do this one for definite on every test. You'll pull up behind a vehicle about a car length away. Now, I did have to encourage my pupil to move a little bit closer to do this. So this is an angle start. The examiners want you fairly close to the car, and this allows them to assess how you move away from a situation like this. So what they're after is good steering control, good blind spot checks, and good awareness for oncoming cars as well. We don't swing out into the path of an oncoming car. Now, we did sit here for a couple of minutes just so I can make a couple of notes. So that lorry didn't actually turn into a car. That is just a skip in the video. Don't worry, there are not ghosts in Ashfield. As we go along, there are a few bends, and these ones are quite tight. So we want to make sure, again, we're taking our time through these bends, using the mirrors effectively as we go through. The pupil does a really good job there, keeping nice and close to the left-hand side as we make our way through the bend, and using the mirrors to keep an eye on who is behind as we're doing that as well. So absolutely brilliant example of how to do this. There's a lot of parked cars on the left there, so if you're not sure about the space, hold back and let the vehicle pass before you go through. We've also got a couple of pedestrians there standing in the road who seem very oblivious to our presence, so just give people like that plenty of room and make sure if they do step back towards your vehicle, you're going to be clear of them. And again, nice and slowly as you go past them. Up ahead, we're going to be taking a right turn, and this one's quite easy to miss, so it's just after the building and before the bus stop. It is quite a tight side road as well, so we want to make sure we're looking up into that road before taking the turn, making sure that if anyone is coming, that we go straight into our side of the road and don't cause a problem for them. There's also a lot of parked cars here, so again, we've got to look up for a clear path to go through. If we just storm into a road like that, we could end up facing an oncoming car and not have any space to deal with it. So always look into your turns before you commit to them. We're going to take the next road on the left. Again, this one's very tight and it's very hard to see, so the pupil does a really good job covering the mirrors, getting the signal on and slowing right down so she can bring the nose of the car into our side of the road. I'm then going to ask her to pull up on the right hand side to do a right reverse maneuver. So the trick to this one is pick where you want to pull over, check your mirrors, get your signal on and pull over nice and swiftly. Don't spend too long thinking about where to pull over. The examiners aren't too concerned about driveways normally. Now you notice my pupil does carry on a short distance along that curb to straighten the car up. Now in a busier situation, or if she continued, this could escalate into a serious fault for choosing that spot to pull over. So make sure you pull over fairly swiftly and don't continue down the wrong side of the road for more than is necessary. Again, as we're reversing, you can see the steering does move around a little bit. The pupil is struggling to keep the car nice and straight. She's overcorrecting, but it doesn't create enough movement to warrant any fault in my opinion. She's also checking her shoulders regularly, both over the left side for cars coming down the road behind and over the right side for pedestrians and driveways. And this is really essential when you're doing the maneuver. The examiner will tell you when to stop when you do this on your test, so just keep going until they tell you to stop. Then they'll ask you to drive on when it's safe. So of course, checking your left blind spot before you pull away in this case, and making sure you get straight over to your side of the road. Once again, be mindful of oncoming cars because of course you're crossing their path to get to your side of the road. So the examiner will want to see that you account for that when you pull out. Again, this is a nice tight road with lots of parked cars, so we're keeping the pace nice and slow. The pupil's covering her mirrors regularly to keep herself aware of how much clearance she's got on either side. She did go a little wide at points, but not to the point that I think there was an issue or it was worth marking a fault. She was just using the space available to her. At the end of the road, we'll be turning left. Now this is quite a closed junction because we've got hedges on the left and fencing on the right, which really limit our view. So the examiners again want to see you pull right up to that junction, get a good look out of it before you pull out, make sure nothing's coming. So if you just fly out of those junctions without checking it's safe, you are going to get stopped by the examiner potentially, and you are definitely going to get with a serious or dangerous fault for doing so. So any blind junctions like that, bring your speed right down and pretty much stop at the end. Make sure you can see before you pull out. The end of this road we're turning left. It's quite a tight one as well, and we've got to consider the oncoming cars, the cars coming from the left-hand side when we pull out. If you notice the post on the left there, highlighting where the curb sticks out around the parking spaces, that really limits our space as we pull out. So you've got to make sure that we keep tight to our side and avoid interfering with the oncoming cars as we swing out. Like I say, it's quite a tight corner, and if we rush out and we end up swinging into the path of an oncoming car, even slightly, and causing them a problem, that is too high risk for the examiners to overlook, and it will be a fail on your test. Just up ahead, my pupil and I had a chat about this one afterwards. If you notice the speed, my pupil is in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, and yet along this road, for some reason, she slows down to 20 mile an hour. Now, there's nothing going on ahead when she does this. This has got to go down as a driver fault. It could be a serious fault if there's cars behind us. And what she said was she spotted the school sign and the advisory for 20 on the left there. Now, these kind of signs are advisories, and that one says when the lights flash. So when the lights aren't flashing, it's not advising you to do 20. So the speed limit is still 30. When the lights are flashing, it will normally be during school times, and it will be obvious that it's busy, and you'll have to travel at lowered speed because of how busy it is. So be very attentive to what the sign actually tells you to do, and try and avoid slowing down when you don't need to, like in that situation. As we approach the mini roundabout, I'm going to be taking my pupil left, and my pupil does slow down quite a lot here, and this could be seen as hesitation. However, there is a van coming from the right hand side, and it doesn't indicate on the approach until it gets closer. So I think that slowing down like this was justified, just to make sure that that van was actually turning before my pupil committed fully to the turn. So absolutely fine. No fault for doing that. If you're not sure where someone's going, if they don't make it clear, then it's reasonable to hold back until you're certain of where they're going. You might notice as we come along this section of road, there's quite a lot of warning signs. We've got a warning for bends, we've got a warning for a downhill, and a lot of the road says slow on it as well. So the examiners will expect you to respond to those signs by reducing your speed, and those road markings, of course, telling you to slow down. So my pupil does a really nice job here. She's on the mirrors, she keeps that speed low as she comes around the bends, just till she can see enough to make progress, and that's absolutely spot on. Kane is adapting to the conditions of the road perfectly. The colour of the road here as well is it's a different road surface, and this is a high grip tarmac. Now that normally suggests that is a common place for people to lose control or lose grip, so another reason to go nice and slowly. We're going to be turning left in a moment, and this is the first mirror fault that I pick up of my pupil. In fact, it's the only one that I pick up. As we come up to this turn, there appears to be no effort to look to that left-hand mirror. She does slow down, she does signal in good time, and she does keep the car tucked into her side of the road quite well, however. So I'm just going to put a driver fault for that one. If you repeatedly miss your mirrors, it can escalate into a serious fault, so keep your eyes moving. We're then going to bend to the right, and this is a bend, not a turn, so I'm going to put a driver fault for my pupil, signaling because we don't need to. See how the markings guide us around into that national speed limit road. This is one of those roads where, even though the limit is 60 mile an hour, it definitely isn't appropriate to do 60. So the examiners will want to see you adapt according to the road conditions. It's quite narrow, it's quite bendy at points, so my pupil keeps a balance of progress and caution as she's going along. So you watch the speed as we go down here. Where she can see, she's making good progress. Even under the bridge here, you can see there's nothing coming, so there's no reason to hold back and be cautious. If there is something coming, of course, we've got to prepare to give way. As we come around the bend, she adapts her speed really well. She does cut the corner a little bit, but there's no risk involved in that because we can see clearly there's nothing coming. So I'm not going to record that as a fault on this occasion. And then this bridge here, we have to give way to the oncoming traffic, and you can see her reducing her speed, making sure she can see through that bridge before committing to it. Again, a nice comfortable pace as we make our way up the road here, so you can see her picking up nice and confidently, but not racing down the road, not going up to 60 mile an hour as the limit says, because it just is not appropriate. Something to be mindful of here is those muddy verges. If you don't pay attention to your left hand side and you end up leaning too far, that is going to grab your wheels and pull you in very, very quickly. So the examiners will keep an eye on that, and they expect you to adapt your speed based on the space you have. So if you're having to get closer to those muddy verges, make sure you're reducing your speed to match the space you have. Use the mirrors too to help judge the space more effectively, and that will keep you safe. The end of the road, we're turning left. It is a little bit of a curve before we turn, so just got to keep tucked into our side of the road, and the pupil does a really nice job there. She looks out the right to see if anything's coming, and nothing's there, so she keeps moving, and that's absolutely spot on. Again, if we can make early observations and keep the car moving, then that's what we should be doing. The examiners want to see a safe and progressive drive, not rushed, but not overly cautious as well. As we come around this bend, we come into a stretch where there's again lots of parked cars. So meeting cars in situations like this, dealing with oncoming cars, has to be done very, very carefully. We want to be covering those mirrors, aware of who's behind us, particularly if there's motorbikes behind who might try and squeeze through the gaps. And we want to be aware of the space we've got as we go through. So checking the left and right mirror when we're moving around. And of course, just reducing the speed where that space becomes more limited. As we go along, the pupil is doing a really good job of this until we deal with the oncoming lorry. As the lorry comes, my pupil has a lovely space on the left-hand side where she could have dipped in quite swiftly. Unfortunately, she just doesn't move in enough, and we end up very, very close to that lorry as it passes by. So you'll see that happening in a moment. We had plenty of room, as I say, and we should be using that room effectively, not skimming past the oncoming vehicles. I've asked my pupil then to pull up on the left. It's not too bad, but just a little bit far from the curb when she does this. So we want to get right into that curb to create more space for the cars to pass by. Now there was a van behind who did seem to almost pull up behind us as we stopped, but my pupil did check her mirrors and signal, so it's not her fault that van didn't respond effectively to what we were doing. As you notice there, another ghost moment in Ashfield. I've just skipped through because we sat here for a couple of minutes while I made a couple of notes. Now, this can be a useful thing to do if you're on your test as well. Whenever you pull over, just take a few moments, steady your nerves, catch your breath, and then drive on again. And that's far better than continuing on even though you're feeling stressed and just letting that spiral out of control. The end of the road, we're going to turn right. Now this is a give way and it's on a bend. Now, unfortunately for my pupil, because of the angle of the junction and where she positioned herself, the driver's side A-pillar blocked her view of the blue Peugeot that was coming down the road, and as a result she's went to pull out on this car and I've had to stop her from continuing. This will go down as a dangerous fault, sadly. From my point of view in the passenger seat, I can see out the window nice and clearly that this car's coming. The camera can't see it because it's too far forward and the angle of it doesn't open up the view enough, and the pupil's view sadly was obscured by that A-pillar. It literally was a case of out of sight, out of mind. My pupil could not see the risk, so she didn't prepare for that risk, and as a result I've had to intervene. As we pull out there, you'll see the traffic light warning sign on the left. Again, the examiners want to see you respond to that. The signs are there to help you identify what's going on ahead so you don't get caught out by hazards that you might not be able to see normally. So in this case, the lights are at the top of the hill. You can see the van mostly blocks our view of those lights. And that, of course, could cause us a problem if we weren't aware of those traffic lights in the first place. When the lights do change, it's quite a steep hill start, so we've got to make sure we load the car up with some power to get it up the hill, but also that we're not rushing up behind that van and getting too close behind it. So a nice balance of power, but patience as well. We'll be taking a left turn. Of course, looking up into that road is what you want to be doing to help coordinate the steering. Do have a little look to the opposite side as well, just in case someone is coming through the lights who you wouldn't expect, such as a blue light vehicle or a cyclist who might be only halfway across the junction if the lights have only just changed. As we go ahead into the 50 zone, we want to pick up our speed nice and confidently, and the pupil does a really good job of that. In fact, shortly she does too good of a job of that, and I'll talk about that one in a moment. Now, keeping in mind this is a 50-mile-an-hour zone, we've just passed another reminder. Unfortunately, my pupil gets a little bit muddled with the speed limits there because we're surrounded in just greenery. She assumes it's national speed limit and continues all the way up to 59 mile an hour, which is where I've told her you need to slow down, it's 50. If you only creep over a small amount and correct it, you might get away with no fault or a driver fault, but because this is quite substantial and I've had to tell the pupil to slow down, it's got to go down as a serious fault. Up at the traffic lights, we're going to continue straight ahead, so we've got a warning sign there to help out and a change in speed down to 40. As you can see, these lights, they might be difficult to see when we're traveling at speed up towards them or when there's lots in front of us, particularly big vehicles like lorries. Like I said earlier, those warning signs are to help us find things that may not be visible as we approach them, such as those lights being hidden by the lorry ahead. As we come across this junction, we'll notice the red light on the right of us. We've also got green on the left and green for straight. These can cause a bit of confusion, so focus on the direction that you're going in, and if the green arrow points to where you're going, you are free to go. Up ahead, we've got another set of traffic lights where we will be taking a left turn, and my pupil unfortunately is going to pick up another driver fault here. When you're sat at a red traffic light, it's really important to be mindful of both the traffic light and your surroundings. If you fixate on the traffic light, you're going to miss out on something going on around you, but if you look around too much, you're going to miss out on the traffic light. My pupil unfortunately did the latter there, and she was looking around a little bit too much when those lights changed, causing a little delay in her responding to the traffic light. As we go across the junction, you notice a car starting to pass us to go straight. When she heard the engine picking up from that car, that's what brought her focus back onto the traffic lights. So we want to be very careful to get too distracted, because of course this kind of mistake could escalate very quickly into a serious fault. Had she not responded to the vehicle revving its engine behind us, then that's exactly what would have happened here. Now, positioning on roads like these is really important, and it's so easy to move into the left too far when you see an oncoming vehicle, particularly if that vehicle's a lorry. It's also easy to do it on bends, and that is exactly what my pupil does up ahead. She just oversteers ever so slightly, putting the left wheels on that solid white line as we come around one of the bends. I am going to record that as a driver fault because I didn't feel it created enough risk to warrant anything more than that. However, just like with the traffic light situation, a mistake like this could escalate very quickly into a serious and dangerous fault. When you're out driving on your own after your test, that of course could pose a real danger to you. If you catch that muddy verge, it's going to pull the wheel, and that of course is going to cost you control over the car and put you in danger. We're just coming into a national speed limit road here, but also if you look ahead, there's a couple of warning signs. The first of which says there's queues likely, and the next one, which you'll see in a moment, tells us there's traffic lights up ahead. So when there's warnings again, we don't want to come steaming around that bend at 60 miles an hour. We want to be aware that those lights could be red and that there could be a queue at that set of lights. So we don't want to travel the full speed limit. We want to make sure we adapt our speed, and where our sight is limited, such as a situation like this, and the warning signs give us that extra information, we just want to hold our speed back a little bit, so if anything is there, we're ready for it and we can stop nice and safely. Just up ahead, we've got a mini roundabout, and on the left just before it, you'll notice a 30 mile an hour sign. When you approach any junction, be mindful of speed changes both before or after the junction. If you miss them and you end up going over that speed limit or driving too slow for the conditions, then of course that is going to cause you a problem, either by you not being safe because you're going too fast, or by people behind wanting to get round you quicker because you're not going fast enough. We want to be driving in a pace that is both progressive but also safe. So not too fast and not too slow for the situation that we're in. Just coming back into the test centre, and I'm going to mark another serious fault for my pupil here. It's a very, very tight corner coming in here, so we want to bring the speed down and turn in just behind this blue sign. However, my pupil drives just over the footpath there with the left wheels, and you might notice that she swings across those central markings, and if something was coming the other way, that could be a problem, particularly as there's a lot of HGVs up and down this section. We're going to pull up on the left just behind the white Seat there to wrap up this mock test and go through the faults. So I do hope that you found this useful in preparing for your own driving test. If you have, please make sure you like, share and subscribe, and I'll keep putting more of these out as I can. Thank you again for watching, and God bless.